Dealing with micromanaging. I don't have any great stories because my malicious compliance method works really well. But when I get a really annoying question about why we do something that could lead to needless changes or upper management tries to micromanage me, I found a great way of throwing them off. It does take time and effort to implement. And yes, ChatGPT does help to a large degree. Otherwise it is just write them back the longest possible email back. Include multiple attachment documents, emails, and flowcharts of business processes. Just give them everything on the subject. It is even better if they don't know the technical details because you get to explain those to them. 2. Leave no rock unturned. The point is to not have them read the email. Someone trying to micromanage you now has to read 3-page email and read up on technical specifications going back to 2010, along with an old email thread of why changes were made in 2016. However, this only works if you know your stuff. And this works great. Half the time, they don't respond. The other half, I get a short message back saying, "Thank you." One time, my boss directly above me was CC'd on the email and loved my response. It just takes work to implement. But in the long run, management will leave you alone. Your approach would be very effective. I absolutely believe you get either no response or "thank you." Well played. I once worked for a place that had been in business for 150 years. Every so often a new manager would be hired and would come out of the gate with a bunch of innovations, thinking we were just a bunch of old-fashioned lazy people who couldn't be bothered to improve equipment designs. Our experienced engineers would always enjoy telling the new guy that, for example, his idea was tried in 1982 and failed in the field 5 years later, and our equipment is supposed to last 30 years. After 5 or 6 suggestions had been shot down because they had all been tried before and rejected, they would quit making suggestions and start bragging to customers about how time-tested and solid our equipment was. I believe the science fiction novel, Sea of Glass, mentions a U.S. congressman asking why a computer recommended a certain action be taken, and the computer designer printed out all the factors which the computer had considered when making the recommendation. The paper printout filled several rooms this paper, and these rooms were called the Shrine to Why. I always found this a very appropriate name, and this memory has stayed with me since I first read this book nearly 40 years ago. Bury them in details of how everything they just said is wrong. My own preferred response method, when I get stupid emails asking stupid questions. I have found this works on occasion, but the hardcore micromanagers ignore the information and efforts to just keep micromanaging. I have rarely seen a positive return on investment on this approach. Honestly, I don't like this. It costs them zero to ignore your email, and takes you too long to compose it. Instead, set up a weekly status meeting because the info is too hard to digest over email. After a couple meetings they will give up. One time in university, I wanted to see a professor about a bad grade they gave me. They always sent emails as short as possible, so I tried to keep mine short and to the point as well. We made an appointment, but I ended up studying with someone in the cafeteria and completely forgot about it. I sent the professor another brief email basically saying, "Sorry, I forgot. Can we reschedule?" He decided he'd rather ignore my question and tear into me about how disrespectful I was being. How he took an hour out of his busy schedule and set it aside for me and blah blah blah. Longest email I ever got from him. Alright then. I sent back to him a detailed account of my entire day. How I had one class in the morning at 8. How we scheduled that meeting for 10. How I decided to pass the time until then by studying with a friend. How I only noticed that I missed the appointment when it was already 11:30. How I sent him an email immediately. How I didn't check my email again during my next class. How I only noticed after that class that I sent it to the wrong email. All profs had last name first name at uni, but he had first name last name at uni. And detailed how I scoured the uni website to find the correct email address after he hadn't responded. And then how I drove home for an hour and only saw his reply after I got home. And generally apologizing over and over again and clarifying that respect does not come into it when forgetting stuff, as my brain did not choose to forget actively as a rebellious act of disrespect, but simply that I lost track of time. I ended that email with, "Is next Tuesday at 12 alright for you?" and sent it. He just sent back, "12 is fine. Prof name, like always." He didn't mention it at all when we met to talk about my exam. Probably didn't want to admit that he liked it better when I kept my emails short and to the point.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.